The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, cold and distant. Captain Day One stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the massive structure ahead grow larger. The convergence was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It floated in the darkness like a small moon, metal and crystal twisted into impossible shapes that hurt the eyes to follow. Lights flickered across its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. 5 minutes to docking, Captain, the pilot said quietly. Day One nodded. Behind him, Ambassador Jiwoo sat reviewing her notes for the 100th time. She looked young for such an important role, barely 30, with dark eyes that carried both hope and worry. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Council, and everyone back on Earth was watching. "Do you think they'll listen?" Jiwoo asked without looking up. "They invited us here," Day One replied. "That's something." The shuttle docked with a metallic clang that echoed through the hull. Day One checked his sidearm, more from habit than any real expectation of trouble. 2 security officers flanked them as they walked down the ramp into the convergence. The interior was vast. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into shadow. Beings of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some floated. Some slithered. A few were so alien that Day One couldn't even tell which end was the head. None of them paid any attention to the human visitors. A tall creature with gray skin and too many joints met them at the entrance. Its voice came from a device on its chest, translated into flat, emotionless English. "Follow me. The council is waiting." They walked for what felt like an hour through corridors that twisted and turned in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Finally, they entered a chamber so large it could have held a city. At its center, raised on platforms of different heights, sat the members of the Galactic Council. Day One counted hundreds of them. They sat in perfect silence, watching the humans approach with eyes of every color and shape. At the highest platform sat High Arbiter Velmuth. The being looked like living crystal, catching and bending the light in rainbow patterns. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire chamber without echo or distortion. "Humanity, we have observed your species for 3 of your months. We have studied your history, your culture, your technology. We have reached a decision." Wu stepped forward and bowed slightly, as she had practiced. "High Arbiter, we are honored to stand before the Galactic Council. Humanity comes in peace, seeking to join the community of civilized species." Velmuth's crystalline form shifted, colors swirling. "Peace, yes, your messages spoke often of peace. Yet your history speaks differently." A hologram appeared in the air between them. Images flickered past: wars, weapons, cities burning, bodies in the streets. Every terrible moment from human history played out for the Council to see. "Your species has spent 90% of its existence at war," Velmuth continued. "You have developed 17 different methods of mass extinction. You reached your moon by using weapons technology. You split the atom not for energy, but for bombs. Even now, as you reach for the stars, your ships carry weapons." "We've changed," Jiwoo said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We've united. We've put aside our old conflicts. We want to be part of something greater." "You are children playing with fire," another council member said. This one looked like a mass of tentacles wrapped around a glowing core. "Dangerous children." Velmuth raised one crystalline hand. The hologram changed, showing the galaxy itself. Red zones spread across it like a disease. 847 civilizations sit on this council. We have maintained order in this galaxy for 200,000 years. We have prevented wars that would have consumed entire star systems. We have guided species from primitive violence to civilized cooperation. This is our purpose. This is our duty. And we respect that, Gawu said carefully. We want to learn from you. We want to contribute. You will have that opportunity, Velmuth replied. Under our guidance? The High Arbiter gestured, and a document appeared in the air. Text scrolled past, page after page of dense legal language. Day One felt his stomach tighten as he read. These are the terms of your integration, Velmuth explained. First, you will reduce your military to 10% of current size. Defense forces only, no offensive capability. Second, you will accept genetic monitoring of all human births. We must ensure your violent tendencies do not spread. Third, you will accept council administrators on all human worlds. They will guide your development. Fourth, all human expansion beyond your current system requires council approval. Fifth, all technology development requires council oversight. The chamber fell silent. Jiwoo stared at the document, her face pale. You're asking us to give up our sovereignty, she said quietly. We are offering you survival, Velmuth corrected. Your species is classified as volatile emerging. Without guidance, you will destroy yourselves or threaten others. We have seen it before. We will not allow it again. And if we refuse? Jiwoo asked. For the first time, emotion entered Velmuth's voice. Surprise. Refuse? No species has refused council authority in 50,000 years. Then we'll be the first, Jiwoo said, standing straighter. Humanity did not crawl out of caves and reach for the stars just to bow to masters. We fought too hard for our freedom to surrender it now. The chamber erupted in noise. Hundreds of alien voices, translated into dozens of languages, all talking at once. Velmuth raised both hands, and silence returned immediately. You do not understand the gravity of your choice, the High Arbiter said. We are not asking. We are informing you of reality. You will accept these terms, or we will implement containment protocols? Containment? Day One stepped forward, his hand moving toward his weapon before he forced it to stop. What does that mean? A new figure appeared on a platform. This one wore armor that seemed to absorb light, and its eyes glowed red behind a dark helmet. I am Enforcer Prime Kreeth. Containment means we ensure your species can threaten no one. We have done this before. It is efficient. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Day One understood immediately what the creature meant. Extermination. They were talking about wiping out humanity if Earth refused to submit. You have 30 standard days, Velmuth said. Consider carefully. The Council's decision is final. The platform they stood on began to move, carrying them back toward the entrance. Jiwoo tried to speak again, but no sound carried in the vast chamber. Within minutes, they were back at their shuttle dot as they launched away from the convergence. Day One looked at his instruments. Dozens of Council warships were moving, taking up positions around human space. They weren't even trying to hide it. They're going to kill us, Jiwoo whispered. Not without a fight, Day One replied. Setting course for Earth, not without one hell of a fight. The emergency session of the United Earth Government lasted 18 hours. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every settlement in the solar system gathered in Geneva. The chamber buzzed with fear and anger in equal measure. Chancellor Myung stood at the podium, his face gray with exhaustion. We have 27 days remaining. The Council's fleet is already positioning itself at the edge of our system. We must decide now. Do we submit or do we fight? Fight? Senator Williams from the Mars colony stood, his voice shaking. Fight with what? They have thousands of ships. We have 47 that can actually fight in deep space. They've been traveling the stars for 200,000 years. We left Earth less than a century ago. So we just surrender? Colonel Sun-hee shot back from her seat. Let them put administrators on our worlds? Let them watch every child born to make sure we're not too violent for their taste? That's not living. That's being pets. The argument raged on. Day One sat in the observer section, watching humanity tear itself apart before the Council even fired a shot. Finally, Jiwoo stood. The chamber quieted. Her broadcast from the Council meeting had made her famous overnight. I stood before them, she said softly, but her voice carried to every corner of the room. I saw how they looked at us. Not as equals. Not even as children. As threats to be managed. As problems to be solved. They've maintained order for 200,000 years by crushing anyone who doesn't fit their rules. They're not protecting the galaxy. They're controlling it. She pulled up a hologram. I've been studying the species that are part of the Council. 43 of them have legends about their wars of independence. Wars they lost. Wars where their heroes died and their people submitted. They remember what it's like to be free. They just forgot how to fight for it. We're not them, she continued. We've never been good at following rules we didn't make. We've never been good at bowing to authority we don't respect. Maybe that's our flaw. Maybe that's why they're scared of us. But I'd rather die free than live as their servants. The vote came an hour later. Fight, the margin was narrow. But enough. Within hours, every military base on Earth, Mars, Luna, and the asteroid colonies went to full alert. Ships that were half-built in orbital shipyards were rushed to completion. Civilian vessels were retrofitted with whatever weapons could be bolted onto their hulls. It wouldn't be enough. Everyone knew it, but humanity would make them pay for every inch. Dr. Hajin barely looked up when Day One entered his lab deep beneath Geneva. The scientist looked like he hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. Holographic displays floated around him, showing ship designs, weapon schematics, and calculations that made Day One's head hurt. "Tell me you have something," Day One said. Hajin laughed, high and slightly manic. "Something? I have a dozen somethings. Most of them will probably kill us as fast as the Council will, but a few might work." He pulled up a display. "The Council's ships are more advanced than ours. Better shields, better weapons, better everything. But we have one advantage. Our FTL drives work differently than theirs. How does that help us? Their ships use something called a quantum tunnel drive. Very stable, very efficient, very predictable. Our drives use a cascade reaction. Unstable, inefficient, but faster at short range. More importantly, we can use that instability as a weapon." Hajun showed him simulations. Ships jumping into knife-fighting range. Weapons that used FTL physics to bypass shields. It was insane. It might also be humanity's only chance. How long until you can build these? Already building them? We'll have enough for maybe 20 ships by the time they arrive. The rest will have to use conventional weapons. On Mars, Sun He trained her special operations teams in the low-gravity training facility. 200 soldiers, the best humanity had to offer. Practiced boarding actions on mock-ups of Council ships built from intelligence gathered during the meeting. "We can't beat them in a straight fight," she told her troops. "So we won't fight straight. We hit fast, we hit hard, and we hit where they don't expect. We're going to board their ships, take their technology, and use it against them. We're going to show them that humans are very good at learning and very bad at dying quietly." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Jahe, raised a hand. "Colonel, their ships are huge. How do we even get aboard?" Sun He smiled. "We ride missiles. Hajin is building special boarding pods that look like standard ordnance on their sensors. They'll screen them for explosives, find none, and let them drift past. By the time they realize what's inside, we'll be cutting our way through their hull." In the orbital shipyards above Earth, Chief Engineer Biora supervised the installation of humanity's newest defense. The quantum field generators were massive, barely fitting in the ships designed to carry them. They were also completely untested at combat scale. "Will they work?" Admiral Taeyong asked, floating beside her in zero gravity. "Define work," Ba-er replied, making adjustments to one of the emitters. "They'll generate a field that should disrupt their targeting systems. Maybe they'll also probably overload our own power systems if we run them too long, maybe, and there's a small chance they'll create a localized quantum collapse that destroys everything within 1,000 kilometers. Very small chance, probably." Taeyong stared at her. "You're joking?" "I wish I was. But it's this or nothing. Their shields are too strong for our weapons to penetrate reliably. We need every advantage we can create." The days counted down. 17, 14, 10. The Council's fleet continued to gather at the edge of the system. Long-range scans showed them clearly now. 300 ships, each one larger than humanity's biggest warship. They sat in perfect formation, waiting on Day 7. Day 1 took the Indomitable and 30 other ships to the outer system. They set up defensive positions around Titan, Saturn's largest moon. If the Council wanted Earth, they'd have to go through him first. Jiwoo made one last broadcast from Earth. It went out on every channel, transmitted to every human settlement, and secretly beamed toward every alien species humanity had detected. To anyone listening, she said, her image appearing on billions of screens. Humanity faces extinction because we refuse to submit to tyranny. We refuse to let others control our destiny. We refuse to trade freedom for security. Maybe that makes us fools. Maybe that makes us dangerous. But it makes us human. The Galactic Council says they've maintained order for 200,000 years. I say that's 200,000 years of species too afraid to say no. We're not afraid. We're terrified. But we'll fight anyway, because some things matter more than survival. Freedom matters. Dignity matters. The right to choose our own path matters. If we fall, remember us. Remember that someone stood up. Remember that someone said no. And maybe someday you'll find the courage to do the same. The message ended. Within hours, it had been translated into every human language and most of the alien ones. On 17 different worlds, beings who had lived under Council rule for millennia watched the broadcast. Some felt hope for the first time in generations. Some felt fear. All of them wondered what would happen when the unstoppable Council met the immovable humans on Day 0. Chancellor Myung stood in the command center deep beneath the Rockies. Every screen showed the same thing. The Council fleet was moving. 300 ships, advancing in perfect formation toward the inner system. "Sound the alarm," he said quietly. "May God have mercy on us all." Across human space, sirens wailed. Soldiers ran to their posts. Ships powered up weapons. Families in evacuation shelters held each other tight. And on the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Day 1 watched the enemy fleet approach and smiled grimly. "All ships, this is Day 1. Arm weapons. Lock targets. For Earth, for humanity. For freedom. Hold the line." The storm was here. The Council fleet emerged from FTL in perfect formation. 300 ships arranged in a pattern that had terrified 1,000 worlds. At their head, Enforcer Prime Kreeth stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the primitive human vessels scatter before him like frightened fish. "Pathetic," he said to his tactical officer. "They have what, 30 ships? This will be over in an hour. The humans are hailing us, Enforcer Prime. Put them through. Let's hear their surrender." Day 1's face appeared on the screen. He stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, relaxed and almost smiling. Behind him, his crew worked calmly at their stations. "Enforcer Prime Kreeth, I'm Captain Day 1 of the United Earth Defense Force. You're trespassing in human territory. Turn around now, or we'll make you." Kreeth laughed. The sound echoed across every Council ship. "You have 30 ships. I have 300. Your largest vessel is smaller than my smallest escort. You have no shields that can withstand our weapons. This is not a battle. It is pest control. I offer you one chance. Surrender now. Your deaths can be quick." "Counter-proposal," Day 1 replied. "You leave now, and we let you keep your ships. Otherwise, we'll show you why humanity hasn't evolved past violence. We're really, really good at it." The transmission cut. Kreeth stared at the blank screen in disbelief. "They refuse? They actually refuse? Very well. All ships advance. Destroy them." The Council fleet moved forward like a wall of metal and energy. Their shields flickered to life, overlapping in a pattern that had broken siege after siege. Their weapons charged, energy building in cannons that could crack a moon. On the Indomitable, Day 1 watched them come. "All ships, hold position. Wait for it. Wait for it." The distance closed. 10,000 kilometers. 8,000. 5,000. "Now," Day 1 said quietly, "execute crazy even." Every human ship fired at once, but not at the Council fleet. They fired at empty space, at carefully calculated points all around them. The weapons were Hachan's experimental FTL torpedoes, designed to do one thing: create unstable jump points. Space tore open in 100 places. The Council's advanced formation flew straight into the tiers, their perfect patterns disrupted as ships scattered to avoid the spatial distortions. Two Council destroyers collided, their shields flaring against each other. A cruiser clipped a jump point and spun out of control, its starboard side crushed by forces it wasn't designed to handle. "Now they're closer," Day One said with a Volf's grin. "Fire everything." The human fleet opened up with conventional weapons. Missiles, railguns, lasers, every weapon they had. The Council ship's shields absorbed most of it. But they were in chaos, their formation broken. Their advantage in numbers temporarily meaningless. Wing Commander Jae-hee led her squadron of 50 fighters into the confusion. The small craft were nothing but engines, weapons, and a pilot. No shields, minimal armor, just speed and maneuverability. They dove through the Council fleet like sharks through a school of fish. Gold Squadron, target their sensor arrays. Silver Squadron, hit their weapon ports. We don't need to destroy them, just blind them and shut them up. His fighters scattered, each one choosing a target. Jae-hee locked onto a Council cruiser and fired his entire missile load in one burst. The missiles weren't designed to penetrate shields. They were designed to stick to them and burn. Dozens of missiles attached themselves to the cruiser's shield, their engines firing at full power, creating bright flares that overloaded the ship's sensors. Blind and confused, the cruiser fired wildly, hitting two of its own escort ships. Deep in the Indomitable's engineering section, Beora watched her experimental shields hold against a barrage that should have torn the ship apart. The quantum field generators howled, drawing more power than the ship was designed to provide. Coolant sprayed from a cracked line. Circuits overloaded and caught fire. "Shields at 60%, she shouted into her com. "We can take maybe 5 more hits before the generators melt." "Make it 10, came Day One's reply. "We need 10. "Captain, I can't just make physics work differently because you ask nicely. You built these shields. Beora, if anyone can squeeze more out of them, it's you." She cursed and started rerouting power from life support. They'd suffocate in 30 minutes, but if the shields failed, they'd die in 30 seconds. Easy math. The battle turned into a knife fight. Human ships darted between the larger Council vessels, too close for their heavy weapons to track. The Council's superior technology meant nothing at point-blank range. Day One had studied every battle in human history, and he knew one truth: a big enemy dies just as easily as a small one, if you can get close enough to stab them. But humanity was dying too. The destroyer Relentless took 3 direct hits and broke apart, her crew of 200 gone in a flash of light. The cruiser Defiance shields failed, and Council lasers cut her in half. The corvette Beijing rammed a Council battleship at full speed rather than surrender, punching through its shields and detonating her reactors inside the enemy hull. Both ships vanished in a ball of plasma on the Council flagship. Kreeth watched his fleet take losses that should have been impossible. How are they doing this? They're primitives. Stone Age savages in metal boxes. His tactical officer looked up from her station, fear in her alien eyes. "Sir, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. They're using tactics that risk their own destruction to damage us. They're sacrificing themselves deliberately. I've never seen anything like it." A proximity alarm screamed. Kreeth looked at his tactical display and saw small objects approaching his flagship. "Missiles," his sensors said. His point defense systems locked on to destroy them, then the missiles opened up, and armored figures poured out. Sun-Hee felt her boarding pod slam into the Council flagship's hull. The cutting torch on the front of the pod activated automatically, burning through armor plating. She and her team of 12 soldiers hung on as the pod shook and rattled. 30 seconds to breach, she said calmly. "Weapons ready? Remember, we need to reach the bridge. Kill anything that tries to stop us, but keep moving." The torch broke through. Atmosphere vented from the ship, trying to suck them into space. Her suit's magnetic locks activated, holding her in place. She kicked the pod's door open and jumped into the council ship. The interior was chaos. Aliens of a dozen species scrambled in the sudden depressurization. Sun He and her team moved through them like ghosts, their weapons firing in short, precise bursts. They weren't here to fight the crew. They were here for the bridge. Back in space, the battle raged on. Humanity had lost 20 ships. The Council had lost 60 and dozens more were damaged. But the numbers were still against Earth. Kreeth's fleet began to regroup, their superior training overcoming the initial shock. All ships, pull back to Titan, Day 1 ordered. Use the moon for cover. The human fleet retreated to the moon's orbit, using Titan's bulk as a shield. The Council fleet followed, confident that the battle was nearly won. That's when Hachun's second surprise activated. Hidden in Titan's rings were hundreds of drones, each one carrying a kinetic kill weapon. Just metal rods, really, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. No warheads, no fancy technology. Just mass and velocity, physics at its most brutal. The drones activated all at once. The rods launched, crossing the distance to the Council fleet in seconds. Most hit shields and were vaporized. But some got through, punching through hulls like needles through paper. A Council destroyer lost its entire engine section. A cruiser's bridge shattered, venting bodies into space. On the flagship's bridge, Sun He and her team fought their way through the last defenders. She kicked open the door and came face to face with Enforcer Prime Kreeth. The alien was massive, his armor covered in weapons. He drew a blade that crackled with energy. So, humans, you make it this far only to die? Sun He shot him. Twice in the chest, once in the head. He fell, his shields having been deactivated when the bridge lost power. We don't do dramatic final battles, she said. Stepping over his body to reach the command console, she accessed the ship's systems, downloaded everything she could, and then activated the flagship's IFF beacon. The Council fleet's targeting system suddenly identified their own flagship as an enemy. Dozens of automated defense systems locked onto it. Time to go, Sun He said, activating her emergency beacon. A human ship swooped in, matching velocity with the flagship long enough for her team to jump across. The Council fleet was in complete disarray now, firing on their own command ship. Kreeth's second-in-command tried to restore order, but it was too late. The human fleet struck again, targeting the confused and disorganized enemy, when the Council fleet finally retreated. Jumping away into FTL, they left behind 84 destroyed ships and the wreckage of dozens more. The human fleet had lost 28 ships, with most of the survivors heavily damaged. On the Indomitable, Day 1 watched them go. His ship was dead in space, engines offline, shields gone, but they'd held. They'd actually held? Get me Earth, he said quietly, when Chancellor Myung's face appeared on screen. Day 1 allowed himself a small smile. Sir, we won. We held Titan. They retreated. Myung looked like he might cry. Casualties? Heavy, but we're still here. We're still fighting. They'll be back, Myung said. With more ships. Let them come, Day 1 replied. We'll be ready. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 3,000 years. The chamber that normally echoed with dignified debate now filled with angry voices in 100 languages. On every platform, Council members demanded answers, justice. Vengeance. High Arbiter Velmuth raised both crystalline hands for silence. The gesture took several minutes to work. When quiet finally returned, the ancient being's voice carried an edge that none present had heard before. 84 ships lost. 41 damaged beyond immediate repair. 4,000 of our finest warriors dead. All at the hands of a species that achieved spaceflight less than 100 years ago. Velmuth paused, letting the shame sink in. How did this happen? Enforcer Prime Kreeth stood on a lower platform, his armor still scarred from Sun He's bullets. He had survived only because his command staff pulled him to safety after the human boarding team left. The humans fight without honor, Kreeth said, his voice bitter. They sacrifice themselves willingly. They use tactics no civilized species would consider. They turned our own weapons against us. They are a plague that must be eradicated completely. Perhaps, said a new voice. Council Arbiter Shendra, a being that resembled flowing water given form, rose from her platform. She was young for a council member, only 400 years old. Or perhaps we underestimated them because they do not fit our rules. You defend them? Kreeth snarled. I defend reason. We told them to submit or die. They chose death, and they took many of us with them. We can send more ships, overwhelm them with numbers, destroy their worlds. But what then? The galaxy is watching. 17 species have sent me secret communications asking why we treat an emerging species so harshly. If we slaughter humanity, we prove them right to fear us. You speak of politics? Another council member said. I speak of survival. The humans possess weapons we have never encountered. They improvise. They adapt. If we let them live, they will spread. They will teach others to defy us. The order we have maintained will collapse. Velmuth listened to both sides, colors swirling through its crystalline body and patterns that indicated deep thought. Finally, it spoke. Arbiter Shendra, I understand your concerns. But the hardliners are correct about one thing. We cannot allow Defiance to succeed. If humanity wins, even partially, others will follow. The chaos that would result could tear the galaxy apart. Velmuth's voice grew harder. We will assemble the largest fleet in Council history. 2,000 ships from every member species. I will lead it personally. Humanity will submit, or humanity will die. There is no third option. The vote was near unanimous. Only Shendra and 3 others abstained, on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The Council had landed occupation forces after the Battle of Titan. They had taken the moon's mining colonies as a demonstration of power. A message that humanity could not protect all its territories. 5,000 human civilians now lived under Council rule. Their communications cut off, their freedom gone, but they still had Don Hyan. He had been a mining engineer before the occupation. Now he led 300 colonists in a guerrilla war that made the Council's occupation a nightmare. They sabotaged equipment. They ambushed patrols. They disappeared into the ice tunnels that crisscrossed Europa's surface, striking without warning and vanishing before the Council could respond. On this particular night, Don Hyan crouched in a tunnel overlooking the main Council supply depot. Beside him, 24 colonists waited with improvised weapons. Mining charges, mostly repurposed into crude bombs. They rotate guard shift in 5 minutes, whispered Kiwon, a young woman who had been a teacher before the war. We hit them during the changeover when they're distracted. Remember, Don Hyan said quietly, we're not trying to win. We're trying to make them bleed. Every resource they waste on us is a resource they can't use against Earth. The guards changed. The colonists attacked. Explosions ripped through the supply depot, destroying food, ammunition, and fuel. Council soldiers returned fire, but the humans were already gone, melting back into the tunnels like ghosts, back on Earth. Hajun had barely slept since the Battle of Titan. The data Sun he had stolen from the Council flagship contained treasures beyond imagination. Ship designs, shield technology, weapon specifications. But one thing stood out above all others. Their shields are networked, he explained to a room full of military officers and scientists. Each ship's shield links to the ships around it, creating an overlapping defensive field. It's brilliant, really. It makes the whole fleet much harder to damage. So why are you smiling? Admiral Taeyang asked. Because networks have vulnerabilities. If we can disrupt the network, all their shields fail at once. I'm calling it the cascade device. We overload one shield with a specific frequency, it feeds back through the network, and boom. Every shield in range drops for maybe 5 seconds. 5 seconds, Taeyang repeated. That's all? That's enough if you're ready for it. And they won't be because they've never encountered anything that can do this. It'll only work once, though. After that, they'll adjust their shields to prevent cascading. We get one shot. Wu had been working nonstop on another front. She broadcasted messages to every corner of the galaxy using every frequency humanity could generate. Most went unanswered, but some got through, on a world called Tathran 4, beings that looked like six-legged cats gathered in secret to watch her latest broadcast. "You've lived under council rule for how long?" Jiwoo asked the invisible audience. 1,000 years? 10,000? How many of you remember stories of your ancestors, the ones who fought and lost? How many of you dream of freedom but think it's impossible? Her image showed footage from the Battle of Titan, human ships exploding in balls of fire. But also council ships burning. Also council ships retreating. "We're not special," she continued. "We're not more advanced or more powerful. We're just stubborn enough to say no. If we can hold them off, so can you. When this is over, win or lose, the galaxy will know that the council can be defied. Remember that. And when you're ready, fight back." On Tathran 4, a being named Koven watched the broadcast with tears in his eyes. His species had been pacified 7,000 years ago, but his grandmother had told him stories of the resistance, of heroes who died rather than submit. He had thought those days were gone forever. Now he wondered if they might return. The council's armada assembled slowly, drawing ships from 100 worlds. It took 40 days to gather, 40 days for humanity to prepare for the end. Every dock worked around the clock. Every factory produced weapons. Every citizen who could hold a weapon trained for the invasion. Admiral Kwan commanded the Second Fleet at Mars, humanity's last major defensive position before Earth. She had 60 ships, hastily repaired and reinforced. It would not be enough. But she would make it cost them. On day 40, the Council fleet arrived. 2,000 ships jumped into the outer solar system in waves. Their emergence from FTL creating ripples in space that Earth sensors detected from billions of kilometers away. High Arbiter. Velmuth commanded from a flagship 3 times the size of any other ship in the fleet. Its weapons could destroy a city from orbit. Its shields could withstand a direct hit from a nuclear weapon. It was invincible. "Open a channel to Earth," Velmuth commanded. Chancellor Myung appeared on screen, looking old and tired. Behind him, Earth hung in the viewport, blue and green and beautiful. "This is your final chance," Velmuth said. "Surrender now, disarm, submit to Council authority. Do this in your species' lives. Your worlds will be occupied, your freedoms restricted, but you will survive. Refuse and we will sterilize every human world. We will erase you from existence as a lesson to any who might follow your example. You have 1 hour to decide." Myung looked at the massive fleet on his displays. 2,000 ships. Humanity had maybe 200 left that could fight, and most of those were damaged. It was hopeless. It was suicide. "No," Myung said simply. Velmuth's crystalline form pulsed with color. "You doomed your species." "You gave us 2 choices," Myung replied. "Live as slaves or die as free people. That's not a choice. That's an insult. So here's our answer. Come and take us. We'll show you what humans do when faced with extinction. We fight. We bleed. We make you remember us." And the transmission ended. Velmuth stared at the empty screen, emotions flickering through its ancient mind. Respect, perhaps. Pity, certainly. But mostly determination. "All ships," it said quietly. "Advance. Destroy them all." The fleet moved forward like a tsunami of metal and energy, unstoppable and inevitable. In its path, humanity waited on the indomitable. Now repaired and armed with everything Hadjin could bolt onto it, Day 1 watched them come. "All ships, this is Day 1. Arm the cascade device. Target the flagship. When I give the signal, hit it with everything we have. We only get 1 shot at this. Make it count." Across human space, soldiers checked their weapons. Pilots climbed into fighters. Engineers made final adjustments to damaged systems. Families in bunkers held each other tight. And on 100 worlds, beings who had never met a human watched and wondered if the impossible might happen. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The Council fleet hit Mars first. Admiral Kwan's Second Fleet held position around the red planet, 60 ships against 200. She knew it was suicide. She did it anyway. All ships, fire at will, she commanded, her voice steady. Make them earn every meter. The battle lasted 12 minutes. Human ships darted and weaved, using every trick Day One had taught them. They took 40 Council ships with them before the last human vessel exploded in a burst of reactor fire. Admiral Kwan died at her post, refusing to evacuate even when her flagship's hull breached, but those 12 minutes bought Earth time. Time to prepare. Time to pray. Time to activate Hachun's final gift to humanity. Deep in a bunker beneath Beijing, Hajun stood before a device that looked like it belonged in a nightmare. Cables ran in every direction. Generators hummed with barely contained energy. At its center, a sphere of twisted metal and crystal pulsed with an inner light. Cascade device online, he said into his comm. Ready to transmit on your signal, Captain. In orbit, Day One watched the Council fleet approach Earth. Behind them, the wreckage of Mars' defense forces still burned. The massive ships advanced in perfect formation, their shields overlapping in the pattern that had protected them for millennia. All ships, hold position, Day One said. Wait for the flagship. We need Velmuth close. The Council flagship led the advance, its massive bulk dwarfing everything around it. High Arbiter Velmuth stood on the bridge, colors swirling through its crystalline body. It felt no joy in what was about to happen, only necessity. Target their orbital stations first, Velmuth commanded. Make it quick. They have earned that much. That's when every human ship opened fire at once. Not at the fleet. At the flagship. Every weapon, every missile, every railgun round. A storm of violence focused on one target. The flagship's shields held easily, absorbing the barrage without strain. Velmuth almost felt disappointment. This was humanity's final stand? This desperate, futile gesture? Pathetic, Enforcer Prime Kreeth said. End this. Then Day One gave the signal. Hajun now. In his bunker, Hajun activated the cascade device. It sent out a pulse of energy on a frequency that shouldn't have existed, targeting the flagship's shields with a precision that had taken 40 days to calculate. The flagship's shields flickered, just for a microsecond. But that flicker fed back through the network, and the network connected every ship in the fleet. The cascade reaction spread like a virus through computer systems, designed to share defensive loads. Every shield in the Council fleet dropped simultaneously for 5 seconds. 2,000 ships hung in space, naked and vulnerable. 5 seconds was an eternity. Every human ship that could fire did. Missiles that had been aimed at shields now hit bare hull. Railgun rounds punched through armor. Lasers burned through metal like paper. In 5 seconds, humanity poured a lifetime of rage and desperation into that fleet. Council ships exploded by the dozens. A destroyer lost its entire port side. A cruiser's bridge shattered. The flagship itself took 7 direct hits before its shields snapped back into place, but the shields came back. 5 seconds ended, and the Council fleet was still there. Damaged, bleeding, but there. And now they were angry. Destroy them, Velmuth said, its voice cold with fury. All of them. The Council fleet returned fire. Earth's orbital stations vanished in balls of plasma. Ships that had fought at Titan and Mars burned. The human fleet was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. On the surface, cities activated their defense shields. They wouldn't stop the Council's weapons. Nothing could. But humanity would make them work for it. That's when Captain So-Yun made her move. She commanded the Whisper. Humanity's only stealth ship. It was small, barely the size of a fighter, and it had been drifting in the outer system for 3 days. Powered down, silent, invisible. Now she fired her engines and dove toward the Council fleet at maximum acceleration. Her sensors were offline. Her shields were offline. Everything was offline except engines and weapons. She was invisible until the moment she fired. So Young picked her target carefully. Not the flagship. It had too many defenses. But the command carrier behind it. The ship coordinating the fleet's attack patterns. She armed every missile, every weapon her tiny ship carried. For Earth, she whispered. and fired everything at point-blank range. The missiles hit the command carrier's unshielded reactor section. The explosion was magnificent, a miniature sun blooming in space. The ship broke in half, and the blast wave caught 3 nearby vessels, crippling them. More importantly, the fleet's coordination collapsed. Without the command carrier, individual ships reverted to autonomous targeting. They were still deadly, but they were no longer an organized force. Sunhee watched from the surface as the battle raged overhead. She had been recalled from Europa with her Special Forces team, given one final mission. Now she stood in a bunker with 50 soldiers waiting for the inevitable. "They'll land troops," she told her team. "When they do, we make them regret it. Every street, every building, every room. We turn Earth into a graveyard for both our species if that's what it takes." But the landing never came on Tathman 4. Colvin watched the battle through the secret communications network Jiwoo had established. He watched humans die by the thousands. He watched their ships burn. He watched them face extinction with weapons in their hands and defiance in their hearts, and he made a decision. "Activate the old transmitters," he told his resistance cell. "Send the message we prepared. Tell the Council we're done obeying." Across 17 worlds, beings who had lived under Council rule for centuries or millennia chose that moment to rise. They sabotaged Council installations. They attacked occupation forces. They broadcast messages of defiance that spread like wildfire through the galactic network. It wasn't an organized rebellion. It was a spontaneous explosion of hope, triggered by humanity's refusal to surrender. And suddenly, the Council faced not one war but 17. On the flagship, Velmuth received reports of uprisings across its territory. Species that had been pacified for millennia were fighting back. Small conflicts, easily contained under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances. The High Arbiter made a calculation. It could crush Earth completely, but that would take time and resources. Time during which the rebellions would spread. Resources that would be needed to restore order. And even if it succeeded, the damage to the Council's reputation would be severe. 17 species had rebelled because humanity inspired them. "Enforcer Prime Kreeth," Velmuth said quietly. "Order the fleet to cease fire." "What?" "We have them beaten." "Do we?" "Look at your casualty reports. We've lost 300 ships. Against a species that shouldn't have been able to scratch our paint. We came here with 2,000 ships to destroy 47. And we're barely winning." Velmuth paused. "If we continue, we win. But the cost will be everything. The galaxy is watching. If we slaughter humanity now, we prove them right to fear us. We prove that we rule through terror, not justice." "Since when did we care about justice?" Kreeth demanded. "Since today," Velmuth replied. "Open a channel to Earth." Day One's face appeared, his uniform torn, blood running from a cut on his forehead. Behind him, his bridge was chaos. Smoke filled the air. Crew members shouted damage reports. "We surrender nothing," Day One said before Velmuth could speak. "You want Earth, come and take it. We'll make it so expensive you'll remember us forever." "We are withdrawing," Velmuth said. Silence. Day One stared at the ancient being, certain he had misheard. "Say that again?" "The Council is withdrawing." "You have proven your point. You will not submit. Destroying you would cost more than we are willing to pay, not in ships but in the example it would set. We came to enforce order. Instead we have triggered chaos. 17 species have rebelled in the past hour, inspired by your defiance. So we won?" Day One asked, disbelief in his voice. "No one has won," Velmuth replied. "You have lost 2/3 of your fleet? Your orbital infrastructure is destroyed. Tens of thousands of your people are dead. We have lost 300 ships and the respect of countless species. But you have survived. And perhaps that is victory enough?" The Council fleet began to withdraw, jumping to FTL in massive waves. Within an hour, human space was empty of enemy ships. On Earth, sirens wailed again. But this time they signaled all clear. People emerged from bunkers, looking up at a sky filled with debris and wreckage. but no longer filled with enemies. Jiwoo stood in the ruins of the United Nations building, watching the last council ships vanish. She started to cry and couldn't stop. Tears of relief, of grief for the dead, of disbelief that they had actually survived. Chancellor Myung found her there an hour later. "We need to address the planet. They need to hear from us." "What do I say?" Jiwoo asked. "We lost so many. Admiral Kwan, Captain So-yeon, thousands of pilots and soldiers. How do I tell their families that we won?" "You tell them the truth," Myung replied. "That their loved ones gave humanity a future. That because of them, humans will never bow to anyone. That their sacrifice shattered an empire that stood for 200,000 years." The broadcast went out 6 hours later. Jiwoo stood in front of cameras, exhausted and still covered in dust. She spoke simply, without grand rhetoric. Today, humanity faced extinction. We were told to surrender or die. We chose to fight. We lost so much. Admiral Kwan and her fleet at Mars, Captain So-yeon and her crew, thousands of soldiers, pilots, and civilians. They died so that humanity could remain free. But we survived. And more than that, we inspired others. Across the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to fight back are remembering. The Council came here to enforce order. Instead, we showed them that order built on fear cannot last forever. We're not heroes. We're just people who refuse to kneel. But sometimes that's enough. Sometimes one person saying no can change everything. The message spread across human space and beyond. On 17 rebellious worlds, beings watched it and took courage. On the Convergence, Council members watched it and felt something they hadn't felt in millennia, doubt about their own righteousness. 5 years passed. The Council underwent massive reforms, transforming from an autocracy into a voluntary confederation. Arbiter Shendra led the changes. Using humanity's resistance as proof that their old ways no longer worked, the Free Species Alliance formed. Initially just Earth and the 17 rebel worlds, but eventually growing to 47 civilizations. They met as equals, no species ruling over others. On Earth, statues rose in every major city. Admiral Kwan standing at her post. Captain So-yeon in her tiny stealth ship, Dr. Ha-jin with his crazy inventions. Colonel Sun-hee and her Special Forces team. And at the center of it all, Ambassador Jiwoo, captured in the moment she refused the Council's ultimatum. Day one retired from military service and became an instructor, teaching new generations of officers. On his first day, a young cadet asked him what it felt like to defeat the Galactic Council. "We didn't defeat them," Day one replied. "We just showed them that some things matter more than survival, freedom, dignity, the right to choose your own path. They could have destroyed us. They chose not to. That's not the same as losing." "But we won," the cadet insisted. Day-1 smiled. "Yes, I suppose we did." In the decades that followed, humanity became known throughout the galaxy not as warriors or conquerors, but as the species that said no. The species that taught others it was possible to resist. The species whose defiance shattered the stars and rebuilt them into something better. And whenever young beings on distant worlds asked their elders if it was possible to stand against tyranny, the elders would tell them about Earth, about humans, about the day a primitive species faced the oldest empire in the galaxy and refused to blink. That was humanity's real victory. Not the battle, not the survival, but the example. The proof that courage matters, that freedom matters, that one voice saying no can echo across the stars forever.